Quinlin, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. So I'm really excited because I am giving you guys a Court of Thorns and Roses series review. It's kind of a mouthful, but I'm really excited to bring that to you today because I love A Court of Thorns and Roses and I love Sarah J Maas. If you've seen any of my videos where I talk about her, you'll know that already. But I'm just absolutely in love with her characters and her series and the way she writes, and everything about it's just chef's kiss. So I'm excited. I'm going to talk non-spoilers and then get into the spoilers, but I'm going to go book by book so that you guys can kind of stick around for however many books you've read. Although if you haven't read all of the books in the series, like, what are you doing? So the first book in the series is obviously A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J Maas, and just to give you a brief summary, there's this huntress named Farah, and she basically is part of this family. She's two sisters and her dad, and they're very poor, so in order to get food for them, she has to hunt. And I apologize, there was some people like leaf blowing outside, so if you can hear that, I'm sorry, but I'm just gonna continue anyway. So basically, she kills this wolf one day in the woods when she's hunting, and then this monster dude shows up and he's like, "That was my friend, like, now you have to come with me and I'm gonna steal you away and you're coming with me to the fairy world." And she's like, "Okay, I guess that's what we're doing now." So she goes to the fairy world, and okay, let me show you. So basically, I'll show you the map. This is the human worlds. This is the wall that separates, and then this is the fairy worlds. So if you're wondering, like, oh, like, you know, fairy worlds, where are they? They're north of the wall, and there's like, yeah, this wall. Anyway, that separates the human and the fairy worlds. Anyway, so she goes, and then there's this blight upon the fairylands, and so yeah, that's kind of it. I don't want to give you spoilers. So personally, I love this series. And okay, I will be honest, I didn't love the first book as much as I love Throne of Glass, which is her other series. And she also has House of Earth and Blood now, or Crescent City. But I really think it takes off in the second book of the series. I think the first book is good, but nothing special, and then the second book is where it really takes off. And I do think there is, like, the major difference that probably made me not like this book as much is just that Throne of Glass was in third person and this book is in first person, and I'm personally more of a fan of third person. I feel like it's a little bit jarring to read from an I perspective for some reason, for me at least. And I always feel like, well, I'm not the character, so I don't know why I'm saying I did this. Whereas I don't know, I just like third person. And so I think that was one of the main reasons. But I do understand how first person really allows us to get to know Farah. And I feel like, I don't know, it was just really good. So yes, if you, for some reason, have been living under a rock and either you haven't heard of the series or you haven't read it yet for some reason, I just would highly, highly recommend. I am absolutely in love with the series and its characters now, and I just think it's something super special, so I definitely think you should read it, and yeah, check it out. So I'm going to jump into spoilers, and we'll start with A Court of Thorns and Roses. So I only had three main things to say about this, and basically the first is that I felt like this book was a lot shorter than I remembered. I don't know if it's just because the other books in this series are just like a lot longer or what, but this book was really short. It was only like 400 pages, and honestly, especially, there was so much lead up. Like, the main thing that I remember from this book is obviously like her time under the mountain, but it turns out that her time under the mountain was only like 100 or like 150 pages of the entire story, and I was kind of shook because that's like the main thing I remember, but she managed to do a lot in those 100 pages, and I think it was good because there was a lot of build up and there was a lot of kind of Tamlin-Farah interaction, and yeah. So I think the first time that I read this series, I wasn't into Tamlin as a love interest, and especially compared to Throne of Glass, where I felt like we had this really great ship from Queen of Shadows, and I was like really invested in it. I just felt like Tamlin didn't compare, and I felt a little bit not invested in that story. So I was a little bit bummed. The first time I read this book, I wasn't that into it, but I enjoyed it for sure, but I just didn't love Tamlin, and I was kind of like, well, yeah, I don't really care about this love interest, so I'm not really as into it. But definitely this time around when I read it, I was trying to be more neutral and just like see it through fresh eyes. And I didn't hate Tamlin. I definitely didn't love him. I didn't feel like he was special. I don't think he compares to my favorite Throne of Glass ship, but I definitely think that It was like better this time around, and I was just like chilling with him. Like I was just vibing and being like, okay, like this is what we're doing. Trying not to like hate on him, you know what I mean? And then again, Nesta, the first time I read this book, I hated Nesta, but to be honest, when I reread this book, I was pretty neutral on Nesta. I was just chilling with her. I didn't feel like I hated her. I honestly viewed her more as just like a really strong character, and I don't understand why she's so prickly necessarily, or why she kind of treats Farah so differently than how she treats Elaine, but I appreciated her character and I didn't hate her. So those are kind of my thoughts on A Court of Thorns and Roses. So next, obviously, is A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J Maas, and this book is a masterpiece. When I say it is a masterpiece, I am not kidding. This book is absolutely golden. I think it is just top tier. It's so good. So I don't know, I don't even know where to begin. So I think the first thing I really loved about this book is just like the mental health kind of representation and showing the character development of kind of dealing with like mental illness and then kind of getting out of that kind of dark hole and really dealing with like PTSD and kind of depression and stuff like that. I felt like personally I kind of related to her and I felt really connected to her in that sense. And yeah, I do think this, like, the beginning can be, like, a little bit kind of depressing, but I feel like it was just, like, a really good and accurate representation, I don't know, for my personal experience at least, of just, like, being really, yeah, I don't know, just being in that kind of mindset. The obvious thing that I loved about the story is the Rhys-Farah relationship. I am in love with them as a ship. I just think they're absolutely perfect together. I am kind of happy because, like, in the beginning, I know a lot of people love Tamlin, and I never loved Tamlin, so I felt a little bit kind of savage because I was like, well, I didn't love Tamlin from the beginning, so I was kind of right. There was someone better waiting for her, and yeah, I felt good about that. I also liked how she expanded the world compared to ACOTAR. So she introduced us to like Ianthe and like the priestesses and kind of the religious aspect of this world. And then obviously Mor and Amarin. And I definitely feel like Mor is significant because that was like our first really good female-female friendship in this story. And I do think that Sarah J Maas has a tendency to kind of really focus on kind of male relationships and not really as much the female-female relationships. And so I felt like it was really important to get more and to like really have that development. And then, so at least they introduced us to like a really strong female-female friendship. I definitely thought like the character development was like insane, and I absolutely forgot how much I love the Court of Dreams. I'm in love with each individual character there, just so special and perfect, and I'm just in love with them. I just love them so much. And yeah, definitely Ianthe from the beginning, even the first time I read it, I think I got like kind of snaky vibes from her. She just doesn't seem like a legit female-female friendship, but I'm glad she like expanded the world and added another female character. And definitely because I feel like there were 5 like main characters in ACOTAR, and that was like Farah, Tamlin, Lucien, Amarantha, and Rhys. And obviously there's like one good female, one evil female, and then men. So I felt like it was nice, especially with the addition of Mor and even Ianthe, even though she turned out to be kind of evil. So yeah, I feel like that was good. And okay, the flirting in the beginning of the book is honestly like peak for me. I love the cute little like banter and everything. Like she throws the shoe at him. I love it. I'm in love. I just, perfect. And then in the end of the book, I cannot even describe the hatred I felt towards like Tamlin and the King of Hybern. I was just fuming. I hated them so much. So yeah, those are, I feel like I didn't really go into A Court of Mist and Fury or really like dig into it that much, so I feel kind of bad, but I don't know, I just feel like this book was so special, and it's definitely like a huge part is like the relationship, but I feel like the best part of the relationship is how they like lift each other up compared to like Tamlin and Farah, like how they support each other constantly and how they're there to deal with each other's, you know, like mental health struggles. like after their time under the mountain. I don't know, I just felt like that was so special, and to see just such like a healthy, good relationship, and also that Reese is so empowering of her as a woman and making her like High Lady of the Night Court. I just thought everything about that was perfect. And then the relationships between all of the Court of Dreamers, I just thought that was absolutely beautiful and perfect. And yeah, I just feel like everything about this book was 10 out of 10. Would read again, and I will read it again. So yeah, I'm just in love with this. I just love this book so much. So yeah. Okay, and then next obviously is A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J Maas. And I guess my initial thoughts were just like, I loved how the contrast between Feyre in the beginning of Court of Mist and Fury and then at the beginning of Court of Wings and Ruin, she was such a savage. I loved Amryn and how savage she was. I honestly, a big thing about this book was that I hadn't read it, so I reread A Court of Thorns and Roses and A Court of Mist and Fury a couple times, at least 3 times, I think. And this was my second time rereading A Court of Wings and Ruin, so I honestly forgot a lot, including like the meeting with the High Lords and a lot of the fights. I remembered obviously like the ending with Reese, but I didn't remember a lot of the in-between stuff, so it was honestly just a lot of fun to kind of reread it and not really know what was coming all of the time. So it was kind of special and exciting that way. I thought, especially like Feyre and Amryn were absolute savages. Then I didn't fully understand why Elaine and Nesta were so upset that they'd been transformed into Fae. And I kind of agree with the idea that they were kind of given a gift because now they're forever young and they have immortality. So I don't fully understand kind of why they were so upset. I can understand more from Elaine's perspective that she lost the love of her life, but the problem with that too is that we didn't ever see from Elaine's perspective, and that's like another drawback of like the first person, is that we never really got to know like Elaine or Elaine's or like Grayson, so I never really cared that they weren't together. And then all we saw of Grayson, it was after she turned into a High Fae, and he was pretty mean, so I didn't really like him at that point. So I just wasn't the biggest fan, so I don't know. That just confused me a little bit. And again, I didn't really, I wasn't annoyed by Nesta or Elaine's behavior. I felt like they were kind of in the right, and I enjoyed them just as characters, but I did feel bad for Feyre because I felt like she put a lot of guilt on herself for kind of transforming them into High Fae, even though it wasn't really her fault. So there was kind of that. And then, okay, the scene where the dad comes back with the ships, wow, that was kind of amazing. And then, like, all the allies showed up. I kind of loved that. But the thing was that I do feel like the dad got killed, but I didn't really care. I honestly felt like it didn't really do anything to the story because I didn't know the dad well enough to care. And I thought it was sweet that he brought the ships, but I don't know. It was, yeah. And then the other thing that I have to say is I don't know if I want Elaine to end up with Asriel or Lucien more. I kind of feel like Asriel because I just feel like he's superior, but I would feel so bad for Lucien because, like, then who's he gonna have? Like, who's he gonna end up with? And obviously he could be single, I guess, but I don't know. Okay, another thing that I have to say is that I guess from A Court of Mist and Fury, I was thinking that Cassian and Nesta will end up together. Lucien and Elaine will end up together, and then Mor and Asriel will end up together. But then obviously she turns out to be gay. And then I can't tell if Sarah J Maas really kind of planned that, or like from A Court of Mist and Fury, if she knew that Mor was going to be gay, or if she only added it in A Court of Wings and Ruin because she felt like there needed to be more LGBTQ rep. And I definitely think there does need to be more LGBTQ rep, but I didn't really see it coming in A Court of Mist and Fury. I feel like the only time she started to hint at the fact that Mor was gay was in this book, like with Helion. And so I kind of was like, well, I don't know, did she really plan that or not? And I did feel like Mor and Asriel would have been a really good couple to have. But again, it is a little bit too like neat of an ending, I guess, for them all to like pair up and all to be like straight ships and stuff like that. So I can understand that she definitely needed some more kind of LGBT like rep, but like I just don't know if she actually planned that or not. So I don't know, I just can't tell. But I'm glad that there is that representation. I just don't fully believe that she planned it from the beginning, if you know what I'm saying, because I feel like she would have alluded to it more in A Court of Mist and Fury. And then, yeah, but like I was saying, so now that Azriel is kind of single, but he's been pining after more all his life, I obviously want him to be happy, but would it be too neat for, like, Nesta to be with Cassian, and then Farrah to be with Rhys, and then, like, the three sisters to be with, like, the three kind of, like, brother kind of figures? Would it be too neat? And then what's gonna happen to Lucien? And then, because, like, I was such an Uriel shipper, I think it's called, like, Azriel and Elaine. I was such a big fan of them two together, but then I reread it and I felt bad for Lucien, and I still kind of want them to end up together, but I would just feel so bad that Lucien doesn't end up with his mate. I don't know, but it would be kind of savage of her to reject the mating bond, so I'm kind of torn in terms of that. But yeah, and then finally, I think the big thing, I did end up crying at the end, and I don't even know if I cried the first time I read this book, but I did cry this time, even though I literally knew Rhys was gonna come back. I still cried. I was just so invested, and I think part of it was, again, like, reading it all in kind of like a smaller amount of time just really helps me get invested in the characters and the journey. And another thing that I didn't mention was that basically, okay, so it's told in first person, right? But I feel like Sarah J Maas paid really good attention to detail, and she ended up really developing the other relationships in the series that weren't related to Farrah really well. Like, Nesta and Cassian had definite dynamic, and then, like, the three, like, Rhys, Azriel, and Cassian had, like, a really good dynamic. Moore had, like, a very specific dynamic with, like, Cassian and Azriel separately, and then, like, with the sisters, and they all just have, like, such individual relationships, and then how Rhys, like, felt about, like, her sisters, and everything I just felt like was really good, because I don't know, like, it would be so easy of her to kind of neglect the relationships that weren't related to Farrah, since it's not in third person and since she's only telling it from Farrah's point of view. But I felt like she did a really good job of really developing all the other relationships, and also making them all be really individualized and not kind of just be like, oh, they just have, like, they're friends. Like, they all had very specific dynamics, and I really, really loved that, and I really appreciated that. Okay, and then so finally there is A Court of Frost and Starlight, and I liked this book just because it was just fun, and honestly I'm so in love with these characters that I would read them doing anything, like, at any point in time. But I did kind of feel like, in terms of, like, a plot and stuff, it definitely wasn't as engaging as, like, her full-length books, just because, like, there wasn't, like, an overarching plot, really. It was just kind of them dealing with, like, a lot of busyness and over the holidays, and it was definitely, like, you could tell it was just setting up the Nessian book, which is called A Court of Silver and Plans. I'm really excited for it. So, basically, that's kind of how I feel on that. But the one thing that I really just took away from this book is, all of a sudden, like, I was fine with Nesta for the entire series, even though she was kind of a brat part of the time. But in this book, I just got really annoyed by her, because I don't understand why she's so mean to Cassian, even though she clearly likes him, and even though there's clearly, like, a spark. I don't understand why she keeps putting him off. I don't understand why she pushes, especially Elaine, away, because Elaine has done nothing wrong. And Elaine is definitely recovering, even though she's, like, kind of recovering slowly. And I don't understand why she's just, like, shutting herself away from everybody and kind of, like, extorting Farrah for, like, money to pay for her, like, rundown flat. And I just started to get suddenly really annoyed by Nesta. And I don't know. I do feel like she needs some good character development in the next book, because I just got so annoyed by her. Like, all of a sudden, it was just annoying. But I did think I was frustrated, because I felt like my favorite part of the story is definitely, like, the characters and how they interact with each other. And this book was very much, like, they were all super busy, and there was, like, other stuff going on. And again, it's, like, setting up the next book, but I just really wanted to focus on, like, the characters interacting with each other. And yeah, so I'm excited for sure for the next book. So, okay, just one final thing before we wrap everything up, and that's, I just want to make a couple predictions. Definitely, I think Nessian is going to get together in the next book, and she's going to go to the Illyrian Mountains, and I think the main conflict will probably be, like, the Illyrian, I don't know how to say that, and how they, like, are rising up and they're kind of upset, and then also probably the humans. Like, I don't think there's going to be another war or anything major, but I'm kind of glad about that. Like, I want her to focus on the relationships and not really on kind of the other things, because again, what I loved about A Court of Mist and Fury is how much emphasis she put on individual character development and then relationships. And then Act of War I still loved, but I felt like it was so much centered on like the war with Hybern that we didn't really get time to like interact with the characters as much, and so it just wasn't as fun. I don't know. So that's kind of my overall thoughts. I really hope she just focuses on Nessian and their relationship, but I kind of want it to be in third person, though I don't know if she would switch it up. Maybe she'll do, because like she did do multiple people's perspectives in first person in A Court of Frost and Starlight, which I don't like. I much prefer third person, but maybe she'll do that, and then we'll still get to see kind of Farah and Rhys, and then hopefully we'll see kind of maybe who Elaine ends up with. I'm kind of interested in that, but I do think it's going to be like a series. Like I don't think it's just going to be a one-off. So very excited for that. And yes, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video soon. Bye!